Hello and welcome to another edition of Empathy at the Table. I'm here with Todd Caponi, CSP, Certified Speaking Professional. He's the author of two award-winning books, The Transparency Sale and The Transparent Sales Leader. Todd is a multi-time C-level sales leader, a behavioral science and a sales history nerd, as he calls himself. He's led two companies through successful exits. He now speaks and teaches revenue organizations and their leaders on leveraging transparency and decision science to maximize their revenue capacity as principal sales at Salesmelon. His third book's coming out soon, 4 Levers Negotiating, and it's planned for release in January of this year, January of next year, January 2026. So, Todd, thank you very much for joining us. I'm really pleased to welcome you here on Empathy at the Table.
This sounds like the perfect podcast for my nerdery too, so I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, two nerds together. I mean, this is I'm smiling from the inside out. This is going to be a fun conversation. So let's kick off. I'd like to, maybe for our listeners who haven't heard of you, who don't know kind of what it is that you specifically do, maybe you can just jump off the launch pad and tell us a little bit about who you are and your trajectory into the world of negotiation.
Well, I'll start with a little story. So I'm a longtime sales leader, but full-time nerd for behavioral decision science. And then, of course, the history that you mentioned in my bio as well. But let me tell you something that happened a few years ago. I was the chief revenue officer of a company based in Chicago, where I am. And it was a company called Power Reviews. And while you may have never heard the name, you've maybe used the technology before, meaning when you go online and you're buying something, let's say it's a pair of Crocs or a sweater or whatever, and you look at the product and you scroll down and there's ratings and reviews under it, we were the engine that did the collect and display of those reviews for 1,000 different retailers and brands. What had happened a few years ago is, as I was running the revenue organization, my marketing team partnered with a local university just to look at what people did behaviorally when they were making a decision, when they were buying something online. We're like, all right, cool, have fun. Like, I thought it had nothing to do with business to business, certainly not negotiating, but what they came back with were 3 data points, 2 of which changed my life like could only happen to a nerd. And so your audience might be, I find this kind of funny, but the 3 data points, the first one that didn't change my life was that we all read reviews when we're buying something we've never bought before. Cool, so no surprise there. But here's the 2 that changed my life, all right? So number 1 was almost all of us skip the 5-star reviews and go to the negative ones first, the 4s, 3s, 2s, and 1s first. And I was like, all right, I do that. Like, I want to read the negative ones first. But then the last data point that really blew my mind was on a 5-star scale, when a product has an average review score between a 4.2 and a 4.5, that's actually optimal for purchase conversion. Meaning, a product that has negative reviews right under it sells better than a product that has nothing but perfect 5-star reviews. And so I looked at that and thought, all right, that's when somebody's buying online. But doesn't it speak to this idea that in a human-to-human, business-to-business type environment, the same thing would happen? And the answer turned out to emphatically be yes. That, like, we as human beings, we don't buy perfect. We don't believe perfect. And we need the negative to be able to even process the positive. And so I thought, well, I've been teaching my whole team to sell as though we're perfect. Like, we're awesome and they suck, right? Like, that was the approach. We actually making it harder on buyers? And the answer was yes. We started leading with our imperfections, basically, or maybe not necessarily flaws, but if I'm selling to you, Tony, I've got to see the world through your eyes and go, hey, if I'm in your shoes, what am I not going to like? What's going to be the risk? What should I be worried about? Is the price going to be at the high end? We would start to lead with that. And all of a sudden, the next thing that happened is our sales cycle sped up. Our win rates went up. We're working deals we should be working on. We're losing deals we're going to lose anyway faster.
Right.
And we're building relationships where customers are buying, staying, buying more, and advocating. I'm such a nerd that I was like, I got to get these ideas out there. So like a lunatic. I quit my job to write my first book, The Transparency Sale. And it took off, again, on this idea that feels good to be honest, but it turns out it actually sells better. And it's led to a second book, and then the negotiating is a separate story all by itself that we can obviously dig into here. But it really started with a behavioral science research study. And I think for everybody who's listening and watching, that the lesson here is perfection doesn't sell. Transparency sells better than perfection. Cards face up, builds relationships, enhances trust, and that doesn't just stop with your messaging. You're negotiating, it plays a huge role in that. Like cards face up negotiating has such powerful impacts, especially in this era of information availability and people being able to share experiences. I just think it's so important for us to be focused on that right now.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, we're really going to chop this up.
Good.
Yeah. So let's maybe, before we start picking these apples off the tree, I want to see if we can unravel the relationship between sales and negotiation. Oftentimes they get kind of lumped together and
Yes.
people say sales and negotiation are the same thing. Where do you shake out with the definition between the two?
Well, it's funny that I'm writing a book on negotiating when I grew up in my sales career as maybe the worst negotiator ever. And it was based on this idea that I always felt like it was weird that we needed a different personality to negotiate than we did to sell, right? And like sales, isn't the goal to help customers achieve optimal outcomes and build a relationship? And we get them all the way to the goal line. Customer says, yes, I want to buy from you. And then, at least the way I was taught was, all right, cool. At a subconscious level, I'm going to start lying to you now. I'm not going to tell you what a good deal is. And in many cases, we're learning to negotiate from former FBI hostage negotiators. Like, wait, what? Like, we don't get to tase customers and drag them to jail. We need them not only to buy, but to stay, to buy more, and advocate. So the answer to your question is, why do we need a different personality to negotiate than we do to sell? I think that negotiating should be just a natural outlet from the sales process where, remember, in this kind of as a service world, subscription software and services and all of that, the deal is no longer the peak of the relationship. It's merely an early milestone on the path to having customers who buy, stay, buy more, advocate, take you with them to their next companies and tell other people, hey, this is what I paid for this here. I just don't think it's sustainable anymore for every one of your customers to be paying a different amount based on how well or poorly the negotiation went. This is all got to start piecing together. We can talk a little bit, if you'd like, about why this has happened and the history of it. But I just think that while so much has changed in the sales profession, negotiating hasn't caught up in a business-to-business sense. And I think it has to.
Well, it's interesting you wanted to take it there because one of the questions I had, which I was fascinated when I read this, you went back to 1883 to find a quote that salespeople cannot be trusted. And I had to write it down. It said, the whole race of Yankee peddlers in particular are proverbial for their dishonesty. And then I really liked the story you told about the way how salespeople were, it was an honorable, career to have, and then it became dishonorable, and now I think we're on our way back to being more honorable within that. Could maybe share a little bit about your knowledge in that area?
Well, yeah. I mean, if you look throughout the history of the sales profession, it's been around, from the Roman Empire and well before that. We've been selling forever. And for most of history, it was a gross profession up until the 1880s. And so in the 1880s, remember, you had a couple of things happening. One was the beginnings of the progressive era of the Industrial Revolution. So people figured out, hey, we can take things and make machines. Those machines can do stuff for us. Sounds a lot like AI today, right? But It's this idea that all of a sudden mass production is becoming a thing. And as a result, we can't have these gross, what they were called as drummers or bagmen, that would travel around the countryside slinging stuff and, slapping backs and boozing and didn't matter if it actually did what I say it does, just buy it.
Right.
That was no longer sustainable. So you had companies hiring their own salespeople, training their own salespeople, giving them variable compensation. Like all of that started to grow in the 1880s. Really, the pioneer of that was a guy named John Patterson in his founding of the NCR Corporation in the 1880s. But what that meant was that reputation became important. And you had reps that were given dedicated territories for the first time. So they weren't competing with each other. They were collaborating. And relationship and reputation started to matter. So through the 1900s, the early 1900s, there was people like a guy named Arthur Sheldon, who his whole mantra around the way that he trained the world to sell, he was really the first public-facing sales trainer, was through the lens of service. He has a quote in his 1911 book, The Art of Selling, that says this: true salesmanship is the science of service. Grasp that thought firmly and never let go, right? That was his quote. And as a result, you had the sales profession really, and there was also some legislation that helped make this even more important called the Sherman Act that kind of got rid of monopolies. Service was the mantra. And as a result, sales began to be trusted, respected. They were money makers, so it was admired. It was taught in colleges. It was actually taught in high schools here in the US, which is crazy to me. And then what had happened is, like always happens, and which recently happened and will happen again, is there is a correlation between the reputation of salespeople and the macroeconomic environment. Meaning what had happened in the early 1920s, especially here in the US, but it was worldwide, there was something called the Forgotten Depression of the early 1920s. So aside from the Great Depression, there was a depression where suddenly all these manufacturers, they were building stuff and building stuff and building stuff. Well, suddenly all that building exceeded demand. You've got all of this equipment and all these machines that are sitting idle. That meant cost, right? It cost a lot to keep all that stuff and to have these machines doing nothing. So salespeople, start lying, start pushing, start pressuring. High pressure sales became a thing. Lying became more of a thing. And all of a sudden you see the reputation of sales drop. You fast forward to the 1950s, you had no colleges teaching it, no high schools teaching it, companies trying to recruit recent college graduates, finding nobody with any interest. Sales had lost its reputation entirely. And we keep going up and down and up and down, maybe not as dramatically, but sales is still near the bottom of Gallup's annual list of ethical professions, even today, right?
Yeah.
So we're not quite there, but for the most part, the people that really care about this profession have retaken on that service mantra.
So as you're talking, I'm still thinking about the relationship between sales and negotiation. And it's hard for me in my mind to reconcile the 80s Gordon Gekko, greed is good style salesperson with somebody who is, brought in to negotiate between two warring factions in a company, right? Sales and finance don't talk, marketing and sales don't talk. And you bring in somebody with negotiation abilities to try and get these kind of different entities to realize that actually the KPIs that you have set yourselves, maybe you need to relook at how you've set the KPIs. They need to be focused more on the customer than on the team and what you're looking for. And so in my mind, I'm just trying to untangle the skill set that is required, right? When you have a look at that sales and then you have a look at the more long-term, emotionally intelligent approach to what's really going on underneath the bonnet.
Yeah, so what had happened, shameless self-plug from my book, 4 Levers Negotiating, but it actually, what you just said is where it came from.
Okay.
A few years ago, actually a number of years ago now, I had a meeting with my chief financial officer. I was SVP of sales. We were just talking about what really drives the business. I had then left that and I flew down to Texas to get into a high stakes, it was a, large 7-figure deal we were working on with a big oil services company. And I remember my rep brought me into that, and I thought it was just going to be me and my rep and then the buyer. I walked in and this oil services company brought their whole procurement team, like, let's go, like guns blazing, like ready to fight. And I was terrible at this. Fresh off my conversation with my CFO, I decided, like my brain was going, I was anxious, and I just kind of went blah around what drives our business, but what actually drives our pricing model. And it came from my CFO. And it was these 4 things. And so these 4 things are the things that drive every for-profit company in the world, probably drive your pricing model. And it came from the CFO, right? It drives the CFO's pricing model too. And the company you're negotiating with, it drives their business too. And here are the 4. So the thing that drives our business, the first thing, is volume, meaning how much stuff the customer buys from you. Buy more, better. Buy less, not as good. So products, services, technology, locations, whatever it is, your pricing model. So volume, buy more, better. Number 2 is, you probably like money, timing of cash. So meaning the faster the company pays for your products, technology, services, the better. Pay slower, not as good. Number 3 is the length of commitment, or how long the company commits to your products, technology, and services. Commit longer, better. Commit not as long, not as good. And then number 4 is the timing of the deal, or predictability. We've got investors we have to satisfy, but we also have to resource these deals. So our ability to predict is really valuable. And so what had happened in this instance is I just basically walked in, they came after me, and I was like, hey, listen, here's the things that drive our business. Our pricing is based on it. Can we just go through one by one here and see if we can get you a little closer to where you want to be? And closer means they were asking for a discount. I told them, well, hey, you can do that a number of ways. Number 1 is commit to more volume. So buy more, the price per goes down. Number 2 is pay us faster. Number 3 is commit longer. Number 4 is help us predict our business. And suddenly, instead of it being customer vendor and people with their dukes blazing, it was a collaboration that was an extension of the sales process. Again, I was being me. Right? I wasn't being a hostage negotiator. And we were collaborating together, give and take. And as it turned out in this instance, they ended up paying us for all 3 years of the deal up front in order to get a discount. And they helped us predict our business. They couldn't do the other ones. And they got what they wanted, we got what we wanted. And for every dollar we gave away in the form of a discount, we got equal value for that. And that was where this concept of 4 levers negotiating was born. I was like, wait, that was easy. That was collaborative. They used it when they bought more. They used it at renewal time. The individuals that left and went to another company were like, hey, you still price based on those levers? Cool, like let's talk about it. And suddenly it just kind of grew from there, became something I taught in every company I led, but then now I teach it more than anything, and it's kind of blossomed into this book. But again, that's where you see that extension of why do we need a different personality? Well, I actually would say you don't. Your price is your price. You can share it in the first conversation. It's consistent. It's flexible within the levers, but for everything you want to pull, you got to push something. And suddenly you have consistency and everybody basically paying the same amount, but obviously getting rewards for doing things that actually help your business.
Yeah, and I guess in the interaction, it's important to signpost this, right? It's important to lay these things out, just as you've laid these things out there, and then give them almost flexibility within the confines, within the context of these 4 levers, rather than just, walking in and then using it as a tactic. I hate the word tactic, by the way. A lot of people use this in negotiation, tactics, and it just feels so manipulative. The reason I like your body of work is it feels intuitive. It feels kind of natural. And you talk a lot about transparency. And one of the things that I like, but I want to ask you because I want to get a deeper knowledge of what you think about this. When you say transparency, surely you don't mean full transparency, right? Do you literally mean, there are negotiators I know that will say you never ever give your final price, you never give your BATNA, you never do that. I mean, are you talking about just open kimono style negotiating?
Yes, I mean basically. So I'll give you a history quote. It's my favorite quote from the history of sales of all time.
Yeah.
It's from another Arthur. This time it's Arthur Dunn. It's 1921. It's a book called Scientific Selling and Advertising. And as you go through the book, it's regular pages. And then there's a page, when you turn it, there's only one sentence at the top of it. And here's the sentence. If the truth won't sell it, don't sell it. If the truth won't sell it, don't sell it. I, again, am an advocate for determining what your price is. Now, if you're a startup, I get it. If you're rolling out a new solution, I get it. But if you're an established company, understanding what the market will bear for your solution, basing your price on it. To be able to say, hey, listen, our per seat or per location or per license or per hour price is X. And it is based on, upfront annual payments, net 30. It is based on a 1-year commitment, right? Like you start there. So there's your volume, timing of cash, length of commitment. That's my price.
But that's giving the criteria for your pricing, but it's not saying this is my cost price. You're not saying this is my cost price, but I'm selling it to you at this.
I'm saying it is. I'm saying like my pricing is X. Like it's this for this.
Okay.
And it's based on these two things. Now, if you want to buy more of it, cool. As you add volume, the price per goes down. If you want to pay me faster, cool. The price goes down. If you want to commit to a longer period of time, cool. The price goes down. And if you want to help me predict, again, mutual alignment around the timing of when you want to do this so I can allocate those hours, those resources, that manufactured goods, whatever it is, that's valuable. That's also something I'm willing to pay you for in the form of a discount. Again, your price becomes your price consistently, but there's flexibility within it, within those levers. I'm just an advocate that, and it's the way that I teach this to organizations that are selling facilities management services. So like one of my large clients is one of the massive ones that does facilities management for large hospitals and manufacturers and all this stuff. And they base their pricing on that now. They say, hey, our price per location is X. The services within it are Y, Z, and A, B, and C. And here's your variables. Pay us faster, commit longer, help us forecast. And suddenly they can go cards face up consistently. They don't have to get themselves stuck in lies. They don't hide stuff until the last minute. Instead, it's consistency across all of them. And I'll give you one other example of that. One of my large clients, they're a $3 billion client in the aviation space. We were going to do a negotiation program, and then they delivered the contract to me. And in the contract, they wanted to use their contract. Okay. They added a paragraph in it, and it was a paragraph. It's basically a most favored nation paragraph. What that means is they wanted me to commit to them that they are paying the same or less than every single one of my customers and wanted to reserve the right to audit that. Now, when I start to say that, people cringe and they're like, there's no freaking way would I? Were you crazy? And like the minute I saw it, I was like, sure. Yeah, like that's fine. Because you are paying a consistent amount based on how much you're buying, how fast you're paying, how long you're committing, right? Like it's consistent. So I know that there might be somebody paying less than you, but they're paying less because they've committed to more, they're paying me faster, and they've committed to a longer term. As long as you're cool with that, let's go, right? And again, the worst thing in the world is like spinning lies all over. I can't remember who I lied to, right? Like now you've just got a consistent way. It feels good. It's honest, but your customers appreciate it. And the negotiation, ironically, speeds up too. And you end up speeding up your sales cycles as a result.
So I'm going to ask for a specific example, and I'm going to give you the example because I actually love this. And as you're speaking, this is why I love doing this show, because I speak to people who have new angles of thought and make me challenge some of the ideals that I have, and I'm sure some of the listeners have. So I'd like to use a live example. I run a conferences company. We organize conferences all over the world. We negotiate with hotels and restaurants and convention centers all over the world for specific events. So let's supposing now I'm working on the behalf of a huge multinational. Let's say, I don't know, for sake, 1,000 people, and they are looking to negotiate a deal for a 3-day conference in Italy, somewhere in Italy, Rome. Now, the price that I get from the convention center will be X. There's an industry standard of we will charge X for our admin fee, that for what we're putting everything together. However, the competition down the line might put in a bid for something else. And another competitor will put in another bid and another price, depending on what they've managed to negotiate with the convention center, depending on a relationship they have. So you have a lack of transparency of pricing there, and it's difficult to measure apples because it's apples with oranges. So how would you then try and create that level of transparency, not just you as a company, but across the industry, to ensure that you're not just being left on the table out to dry?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's so much there. One of the things that I've got so many stories floating through my head, but I'll tell you, like one of my large tech clients, they are always the highest price.
Okay.
Always. Like every time they go into a customer, they are going to be the highest price. And as a matter of fact, there's a bunch of startups that are trying to build the same thing they've got that are like 70% cheaper. And so what I've taught them to do, and it's working famously, is, again, if the truth won't sell it, don't sell it, but lead with it. I believe that the term sticker shock has never been associated with anything good in the history of humankind, right? And so what they do now is they start the conversation with, hey, listen, before we dig into this, before you invest a bunch of time in this, just understand that, our pricing is going to be between X and Y here. And I'm hoping through this process, you're going to understand why that is, that we are the premium solution. It's a higher price here. And if you don't have an appetite for that, cool. Let's just talk about it now versus later. And clearing the deck. Because if you're talking about a 6 or 7 figure solution to a 4 or 5 figure buyer, then one of you's in the wrong conversation. You want to know that up front, or vice versa. Now, it was funny. I was just in New York last week, and I was just joking with somebody about this, that I went to I got invited to go to this fancy New York restaurant.
This is the cheeseburger story, right?
This is the cheese, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
I'm glad you brought it up, because if you didn't, I was going to. Go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. We walked in, and the thing that they're known for is their cheeseburgers.
Yeah.
And the cheeseburger there is between, I think it was like $34 to $38, depending on what you got on it. Meaning, and the only options are you can get an egg, a soft-boiled egg, or you can get bacon, and like that adds a little bit of price. But $34 to $38 for a cheeseburger, like McDonald's has a value meal for $8.50 where you get fries and a drink with it, right? Like, imagine the waiter comes up and you're just like, oh, this price is too much. We have a budget issue. I'm going to need a 30% discount in order to move forward with this. I found an alternative solution down the street for $8.50 that gets me fries and a drink. They'd be like, beat it, right? That's insane. And why does that happen? Why can that restaurant do that? The restaurant was packed to the gills. Like you couldn't even walk through it. It's because they've established that value in the marketplace. This is how much the price is. And if you don't want to pay that, cool, don't come here. And again, the people experiencing these cheeseburgers, like you take a bite of this thing and there's like, like tears rolling down your cheek. It's fantastic, right? And you're just like, wow, I would have paid $50 for that cheeseburger, right? Like that's what companies that are selling premium solutions need to be thinking about is, does our value equate to that price? Does that feel right? Are our customers not only buying, but are they staying? Are they advocating, right? If they're not, then maybe your price is off. But then number two is during those types of engagements, Tony, be able to walk in from the beginning and go, hey, listen, this is our pricing model. This is our range based on this 1,000-person event, 3 days in Italy. This is how we price it. Here's the variables that drive it up or down. And hey, you probably got some other people coming in here that have pre-negotiated rates. They're going to be cheaper. That's cool. If that means that we're out, we're out. I get it, right? You build trust through transparency. Yeah. You build the relationship and you tell them, I'm here to be a partner. There's nothing up my sleeves, right? Here's the price. And suddenly, remember, if you look at the stack ranking of, I'm going to make a decision to go with you, and it's, oh, they have a feature that I want that you don't, but I trust you. The trust is going to trump the features all day long too. So that's why we lead with transparency. We lead with this cards face up approach. You differentiate in the way that you sell. And again, if you're going to lose that deal, lose it really fast. Move on with your life. Yeah. Your most valuable asset is your time. Get out, right? Like that's, instead of messing around with it and everybody's hiding something, be the one that comes in not hiding anything.
Yeah, I mean, I'm an advocate of this approach. It does take a level of real confidence in your own ability as a person, and also in your product or service. And one of the things that I work on with emotional intelligence is what's going on in there, right? What's going on in the shadows, right? What kind of person do you have to be for you to be able to not sound needy and desperate in situations like that? Do you do any of that work, any of the undercover, under the bonnet kind of work, right? What's going on in the shadows when these type of situations come up?
Well, what I really dig into is, hey, what are the most common things that come up in your negotiating environments? And then how are you handling them today? Yeah. And I would argue that most organizations are handling them today in a very needy and desperate way.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is, let's talk about number one. I need a discount. What do most organizations do? Hey, Tony, I need 30% off. Well, they either go into the value argument, like, we believe we have this much ROI. Like, shut up. Like, stop it. That ship has sailed. Or we go, hey, I can give you 10% off and I don't even have to get approval for it, right? And we start desperately throwing things. Hey, how about some free stuff over here? And I'll give you a free month. Oh, like, no, stop it.
Right.
It actually just takes a human being to be able to internalize those four levers, understand that your price is based on it, and then have a human conversation. What I found the first time I taught this in mass, I was running sales enablement for a big unicorn software company. And at their kickoff, they asked me to teach this. This was 2011, so that's how old it is. And I remember just walking through like, hey, this is the way, this is how you deliver the pricing. It took 40 minutes. It's not rocket science. It doesn't require a degree. And then I left. And then when I came back to town a couple of weeks later, there were reps that had been selling for 20, 30 years that were all like, they were like, holy crap, I'm using that. But then I remember walking into the office and there were reps on their first sales job. And I could hear them talking about the levers, right? I'm like, hey, this is what our pricing's based on. And if you need something, here's how you get there. And then they turn around, they're like, it's working, right? So I think traditional negotiating, and I've got another rant I just want to go on about something else you said that I think you might enjoy too. But the whole point of this approach is it's meant to leave anxiety at the door.
Yeah.
And just once you internalize the four levers, everything slows down. And what I teach in the book is like how you do that and you know how to structure your conversations when you're asked for things so you continue to sound like a good human being and do it through a transparent customer and you equal outcomes, right? Like that's what you're looking for. Now, my quick little rant that you might enjoy is that you had mentioned BATNA. And so I just wanted to tell a little quick history story about BATNA. And part of the thing that is why I think that the rest of the sales world has evolved through the proliferation of information and all of that stuff, but negotiating hasn't. For most of history, sales skills around negotiating were not very required. And what I mean by that is up until 1975, here in the US at least, there was a concept called fair trade, which meant there was pricing levers in place, government set, that meant that basically the manufacturers could set a floor by which their solutions could be sold, and you couldn't go under it. So salespeople were like, hey, it's not me, the company. Like there was no negotiating skills needed. In 1975, there was a Consumer Protection Act that was put in place that removed fair trade and made it free trade. Suddenly, all bets were off, right? There was no floors, and it's crazy, but it was meant to reward the consumer, right? That, hey, if I want this, I can negotiate it. But it also meant that salespeople overnight had to learn to negotiate. And most of them had never had any skills in that at all. There was a guy named Chester Karras that had written a book in the early 1970s that kind of filled the gap. But in 1981 was when Getting the Yes and BATNA came out. And for the most part, that's the structure we use today.
Yeah, yeah.
All of the negotiating books since then still play on the BATNA concept in different words and different phrases. But again, the way we're negotiating today is the way we were negotiating 45 years ago. But the rest of the world has changed. Negotiating hasn't. And I just think this cards face up approach has got to be the way forward.
Yeah, yeah. I'm aligned with you, actually. It's something that I've been really pushing to democratize negotiation and make negotiation still seems to be a bit of a swear word, and it engenders some kind of, I don't know, reaction when you hear the term negotiation. But it is definitely changing as people now start to see it as a tool for really creating, real long-lasting, sustainable value. There's something that I found again when I was researching you, and I really liked the line. So I'm going to read it out, and then I'm going to ask you to expand on this, because I think it's something that our listeners would be really keen to hear. So you say logic is pushing people into their corners. Stories and emotions bring us together.
Yeah, so essentially it's based on, you think about, there was a neuroscientist in the late 90s, Antonio Damasio. He wrote Descartes' Error, and the guy's brilliant. But he's got a quote that I love as well, that he says, we as human beings, we are not thinking machines that feel. We are feeling machines that think, right? And so in our brains, we actually trigger decisions in the feeling center of our brain, back it up with logic, not the other way around. Now, the funny thing is, we knew that all the way back in 1620, when Sir Francis Bacon theorized the concept of confirmation or cognitive bias. I can't believe we don't talk more about this in the sales world today, but his definition is the definition I think everybody should know. And it's this idea that once we as human beings have established an opinion on something, we will take all incoming data and logic to reinforce that opinion, whether or not that data or logic actually supports our opinion or not. And so to your point and your question, if we've established an opinion on something and somebody throws data or logic at it, think politically. You got a political leaning one way or the other, and you're like, this is how I believe. And then you see a tweet or a social media post or a piece of data or logic that supports that. Your brain goes, ooh, that's a good one. Oh, I like that. And you file it, and now you're stronger in your opinion. You then see a post, a data point, a logical point that goes against your opinion. What does your brain do? Your brain goes, here's why that's crap, right? And we configure an argument against it. And now we are stronger in our opinion that we had previously already, right? Data and logic doesn't sway us. It polarizes us. So in a sales type of environment, if we've established an opinion on something and we come in going, hey, we're the greatest. This is our missions. We've won all of these awards. Look at all these great clients. The people that are for you are like, wow, that's great. I'm even more for you. The people that are against you are like, those clients don't look like us. They're generalists? Oh, they won those awards, but they won them 3 years ago. Who's winning them now? Right? They're configuring arguments against you. We've got to be very careful in the way that we try to convince people to buy, convince people that our price is what our price is, all of those types of things. The powerful lesson here is that stories with feeling and emotion, they bring us together. And I think we can do that in the sales world through the way that we tell stories where the customer is the hero, not us, and where we lead to our solutions instead of leading with them, which means get those data and NASCAR slides and award slides out of the front, put them in the back, and start with the customer, and you'll find that you're bringing audiences together instead of pushing them further into their preconceived corners.
Wow. You on your work, I think the LinkedIn profile, you led with leadership work. Most of your stuff, that's the first service that you offer, leadership work. So I'm interested to hear the response you get from leadership, right? Because leaders bring the weather. The CEOs, the managers, they bring the weather to the company and they shape the culture. So tell me about the kind of conversations that you're having and the kind of interactions you have with leaders when it comes to this style of sales and negotiation approach?
Well, yeah, I think what I'm finding today, which makes me feel good, is that most organizations and most leaders understand the power of transparency in today's world. That the proliferation of reviews and feedback on everything we do, everything we buy, everything we experience means we now have to, right? 25 years ago, you had a complaint, somebody lied to you. What are you going to do? Like write a letter, call a phone number? Oh, I'm good. Like, no, that's silly, right? Who cares?
Right.
And back then, the deal was the peak. Today, we all understand this idea that the long game not only wins the long game, but it wins the short game too. Because, the tongue, this is another quote I just read that was basically that the tongue of a satisfied customer is better than any advertising you would ever have.
Yeah.
And that we need to start creating those outcomes by creating and being honest and setting accurate expectations that we consistently meet. And so most organizations that I go into, they realize, like I did when I first read this study, that, hey, we had been selling as though we're awesome and our competitors are crap, and I'm going to tell you why. And started to realize, hey, that's not how our brains make decisions. We're making it harder. We're slowing down decisions. And instead, when we actually tell the truth and we tell them, hey, this is what we give up to be great at our core, that's when all the magic happens. And most leaders, when I talk to them that have highly functioning brains, like they're like, yeah, it makes me sick when somebody's presenting to me as though they're perfect and the competitors stink. Like that bothers me. We got to try this, right? And so I'm finding that is getting momentum. This 4 levers negotiating, this approach of, hey, this is what drives our pricing model. It's so easy. It's like, of course. But what most of these organizations are finding is the alternative is what I call word art. And I don't mean that to sound harsh, but a lot of what's being taught in negotiating is old school, hiding the truth until I can get leverage with it, and using word art to, match what you're saying and match your behaviors. Oh, he's scratching his eye, he's lying. Like that. Yeah. And that, for most of these leaders, they're like, we learn it, and 2 weeks later, nobody remembers what they're supposed to be doing anyway. This is just an easy, scalable, super sticky way to think about it.
We are coming to the end, but I knew this was going to be one of those conversations that I just didn't want to stop. So I've got a couple of more questions. One is around, when you see people do like negotiation role plays, for example, and you say, right, you've got to negotiate a price on this. This is your cost price, and this is the most you can sell it for, or the least you can sell it for, and this is the most you can buy it for, and so on. The natural tendency is for people to go into that negotiation and, let's put it bluntly, lie about their price, right? If their bottom line price is $100, then they'll go and they'll pitch high, right? Try and help me understand how you can use the transparency model when the natural tendency is to go in and lie about your price. I mean, people don't say it's not lying; they say it's being economical, or it's that's just how negotiation works. But let's put it through the prism of transparency. How would you go about that?
Yeah, I mean, that exercise, that role play, it should just be called the Petri dish of lies. Like it's designed to be a lying exercise.
Right, correct. Yeah.
And so, like the way that I teach it when I'm teaching revenue teams is every team gets a common thing that comes up in a negotiation. So one team will get, we need a 30% discount. Another team will get, our standard payment terms are net 60. Another team will get, we need a termination for convenience provision. Like each team gets a different one. And what I'm asking them to do is have the conversation, right? And again, it all goes back to transparency. Those are the 4 things that drive our pricing model. So for example, you want net 60 payment terms, and what we've proposed is net 30. That group would first go, hey, where does that request come from? Like, what's driving that request? Step 1 is be a human being. Step 2 is to remind them of the 4 levers. Like, all right, you need net 60, cool. You might recall that our pricing is based on 4 things. How much you buy, how fast you pay, how long you commit, and when you sign. Your pricing, that number 2 one, is based on net 30. If you want net 60, you can have it, but something else will need to be adjusted to make up for that. Let's go through them. Commit to more volume. Commit to extra years. Help us forecast, right? And it just becomes this, with every lever that gets pushed, you got to pull one. With every one that gets pulled, you got to push one. And now we're consistent, and everybody in that room is ending up at the same place, but the prices are a little higher or lower because for every dollar you gave away, you got something of value.
Yeah.
You're right. And that's the exercise. I would again argue that when we put people in a room and go, hey, sell this and get the best price possible, you're going to have every single outcome being different based on how well or poorly the negotiation happened.
Yeah.
Again, in this world of information, that is no longer sustainable. It is a race to the bottom.
Totally agree. It's like going for a job interview for sales and then they say, sell this pen, right? I mean, we did that in the 80s. Come on now. Let's move on a bit, yeah?
And I'll add one thing. There was one of my clients, I went in to do a negotiation workshop with them. And as a part of the prep, we vetted the whole thing out. And then I walked in, and I hadn't met their chief revenue officer. As I walked in, chief revenue was like, hey, nice to meet you, Todd. And he's like, hey, Todd, you're going to love this. We're giving a spiff to our reps, so they get an extra percentage commission when they sell a deal above list price. And he was like all excited about it. And I was like, dude, you need to stop that right now. Like, wait, are you nuts? Imagine a customer finding out that they paid above list price because somebody lied to them. You know, that customer, you know how many buddies they've got? They've got, 7,000 connections on LinkedIn. All right, good luck with that, right?
Yeah.
It's just not sustainable to think that way at all anymore.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think I saw somebody write on one of your one of your posts on LinkedIn that the general way in which they do things in their company is you go for the sale, you lie, you get the price, and then you leave it up to customer services to deal with the crap afterwards, right?
Right.
And I remember reading that, and I thought, I hope it was tongue-in-cheek. I really hope it was a tongue-in-cheek comment.
Yeah, I hope so too, because that's awful.
Yeah. Todd, we are coming to the end, and this for me has been a really great conversation. It's definitely shone a new light on the way in which we engage, and I think listeners, if you're listening to this, it kind of makes sales and negotiations something that's fun, a fun pursuit that we can play around with. I've got 4 pages of notes, but what I've underlined here, what I really love what you've said is. These are the levers of my pricing model. If you need something, here's how to get there. I mean, I like that approach. It's, here's the parameters of our conversation of the deal, and I'm very willing and open to have a discussion on how we can get to where you want to get to within the parameters. So you end up getting value, and also we end up getting value. And I think that's takes a confident approach. And yeah, it's the future of negotiating. So, Todd, before we leave, can I just ask you to share with the listeners what's really exciting you at the moment, and how can they find you if they want to go further and learn more?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously this new book coming out, it comes out January 27th here in the US. I think international is probably close to that. It's called 4 Levers Negotiating. You can pre-order it pretty much anywhere. I'm talking a lot about it, and you can tell my energy level is super high. And then, like we had talked about, when cool people are doing cool things on the weekends, I'm ear deep in late 1800s, early 1900s books and magazines on sales leadership. My outlet for that is called the Sales History Podcast. I do quick 14 to 20 minute episodes where I dig into a topic, research it, and then just share what I've learned. It's got a bit of a crazy following now, which has been a lot of fun. I post daily at Sales Historian on both Instagram and X too, if you just want little quotes or clips, comics, pictures from sales histories past. But you can follow me along on LinkedIn, or if you want to connect, let me know that you heard me here. That would be great. And then toddcaponi.com. I write lots of articles on sales history and negotiating and transparency. You can find all kinds of stuff there, or reach out through there as well.
Excellent. You are a treasure trove of information. I actually did start looking at your podcast, and there was one of my favorites is the one on AI. Will AI kill the sales profession? So, listeners, if you want to know what the future looks like and the influence AI is going to have, I will put all the links in the show notes. Please go. Please follow Todd. He's a genuine guy, and I think he's one of those people that will really, really change the way we see sales and negotiation. Todd Caponi, I'd like to thank you very much for joining us on Empathy at the Table.
I have had a blast, Tony. Thank you so much for having me.
Catch you soon. Take care.